I got invited to play in the Balanced Patch tournament last weekend. It was for $1,000 total with 10 players. I got placed in Group B with byun, Clem, elazer and MaxPax. Now, these players at face value are significantly better than I am. If you take a look at the illegal ratings, for example, byun has 3,313, Clem has 3,284, elazer 2,875, MaxPax 3,242, and I, Harstem, am stuck at 2,449 points. Now, illegal luck is a very good indicator of how well you have performed in the past. It doesn't necessarily predict results accurately, but a lot of the time it is pretty darn decent at it. If you have a person with a higher illegal luck rating, especially in a particular matchup, most of the time that person is going to win. And it's the same if you have a very low rating, most of the time that person is going to lose. That means I'm a massive underdog in this tournament. However, I have been practicing on the new patch quite a bit. I've been studying all of the new maps as well, and I've been thinking a lot about how to play in different matchups. The first matchup that I will be showing here will be versus Clem, so a Protoss versus Terran. Some of the major changes, of course, against Terran are the fact that Terran's Cyclone has been completely reworked. The Ghost has its radius reduced on the EMP, the Disruptor is one more supply, and the Immortal can withstand, well, technically one more EMP right now. So a major change when it comes to the Cyclone, and then some minor changes to make the mid-game a little bit easier for the Protoss side of things. Now, I had watched Clem play before, and I saw that he was very keen on Cyclone builds in general. And there is a certain brand of Cyclone build that has been kind of taking the Balanced Patch mod by storm, and that is the double factory triple CC opener. It is very similar to triple CC openers in the Terran versus Zerg matchup, and Clem is an absolute king at those, often going into a fast starport and then banshees. But rather than getting a fast starport, they just get a second factory. They'll get the speed upgrade for the Cyclones and then start moving across the map with, well, pretty quickly rising Cyclone counts. I had practiced against this and I had noticed some particular weaknesses to it. But because I didn't want to assume anything in the first game, I decided to open up with an Oracle into Phoenix Colossus. A fairly standard opener, which allows you to be very safe, however, is not brilliant at punishing greed from the opponent. So the moment I saw the third CC already done on the other side of the map, I went back into Scout here as well, and I actually ended up seeing the fact that there also is a second factory. So I pretty much confirmed my suspicions here. I was like, okay, he's going to open up with double factory, fast, very high eco build order, and the best thing that I can do to punish it is by getting a bunch of probes myself. So I'm immediately shooting the chrono boost here on my workers. I get some stasis wards around the map. Don't forget, stasis wards also actually got buffed. So stasis wards got a little bit more vision, which is quite useful. I also wanted to start an Immortal. Generally, against the new Cyclone, range units are much, much better than melee units. The problem with melee units is, well, quite honestly, is that they suck. The Zealots and Adepts, which, well, Adepts are practically melee against the Cyclone because the Cyclone outranges them. They just can't reach them because the Cyclones are so fast, they have good range, they can just kite back, and your Zealots are maybe gonna get a single hit in, but that is about it. Like, you can continuously shoot, you don't have to kite with the Cyclone, you lock on and you move back, and it makes it impossible for the Lynx to ever really hit you. That makes it really difficult to ever deal with them. So in my mind, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to get Colossus out. I wanted to get Stalkers ASAP. So usually when you play Phoenix Colossus, you transition as soon as you can into charge lots behind this. But I was like, no, rather than going for charge lots, I think it might be better if I actually end up getting slightly more Stalkers with this. So I probably prefer getting Blink here. And I want to use Concaves. I want to use the map against my opponent. That is going to be the main plan. Colossus, of course, massively outrange Cyclones, so that should technically be a good fight. I'm still adding in Phoenixes. Now, you might think this is useless against the new Cyclone because, well, Cyclones will absolutely destroy any air unit, but I want to build them because I want to play it safe. I don't want to feel like I'm about to die at any point. Cyclones get built so quickly that it's really scary to play too greedy. I'm already building a fort base, And rather than cutting these important Stargate units, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna get as many out as I can. So here I do get spotted, and one of my Phoenix will even end up dying here. Sadly, you see I can warp in 2 Zealots right now at this moment, which is not a very bright call, because they really don't achieve anything whatsoever. I have the Revelation as well, and I have Stasis Wards around the map. Zealots trying to move forward is obviously not quite working out. As my opponent continues just kind of rotating around the map. Map control is now in the hands of the Terran player. Another thing that I had really learned, honestly, the hard way against the new Terran battle mech is that armor upgrades are very important. So generally speaking, when you're fighting against mech, the one thing you don't really need, or yeah, you don't really want, are armor upgrades, because they're not super effective. But against the new Cyclone, because the lock-on uses the auto attack and actually benefits from upgrades, it is really nice to get armor upgrades. They shoot twice a second, and thus having your armor helping out twice a second generally is a good thing. The higher the rate of fire of a unit, the better armor upgrades tend to be against them. And very often when I had seen those double factory builds, I also noticed double armories were being utilized very, very often from the Terran side. Now, as you can see, I'm adding in more and more units, adding in more gateways as well. I want to keep track of where my opponent's army is going, because another thing that the Cyclones are very good at is splitting off and just kind of fighting with small armies all around the map. I'm going for a very defensive setup. And the funny thing playing against these Cyclone builds is that it works extremely similar to how Protoss versus Zerg works when you're playing a low gas style as a Protoss. So in this case, I'm taking the position of the Zerg player, and the Terran takes the position of the Protoss player. They have map control with Cyclones, usually Protoss has that with the Stalkers, and they're just trying to trade as much as possible while out-expanding the opponent. The Defender, however, is gonna get a higher gas count and wants to get very kind of high-techy units until they max out. If they can max out on higher tech units, in the Protoss case, like I am currently Protoss, that's going to be Colossus, it's going to be Immortals, and more range unit. Usually for Zerg, that's going to be adding in a lot of Banelings, which help against these lower tier army. Now here, I believe my army is strong enough to fight my opponent. I see a lot of Cyclones, and I find it really difficult to judge these fights, and as you can see, I completely misjudge it, and I'm really confused by it. I hadn't played enough with this particular composition against Cyclones to understand how these fights worked. So I truly believed that I was going to win that fight, and Clem also truly believed he was going to win that fight. The sad thing here was that, well, Clem was right, as I had absolutely no clue apparently how it was gonna go. I had about 6-7 Zealots in the army composition, which obviously didn't even manage to hit a unit once. They didn't have charge either. I'm trying desperately to stay alive, but if I end up losing my 5th base here, that would be painful. I have extremely low supply. I'm trying to add as many Stalkers as I can, because I know that Stalkers in high numbers are quite good against Cyclones, especially if you use blinking back rather than blinking forward. But at the same time, I realize that at any point my opponent can just pretty much move into me, or they can also start moving out with tanks, and that's going to make life very difficult for me. I'm blinking forward every now and again to try and snipe a single Cyclone, but don't forget that since these, in the patch that we're playing here, is that Cyclones are only 125 minerals and 50 gas, so it's not quite as big if you kill a single Cyclone. It feels really good to kill a Cyclone, because in your mind it says, wow, that's an expensive unit, but in reality it's just the price of a Stalker. So killing a single Cyclone is not actually that great. Well, I mean, I'd rather have a Cyclone than not have a Cyclone, but the dopamine boost that you get from killing a Cyclone, I don't think is quite warranted, at least not after the patch. I decided to throw down a Dark Shrine. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to play a very defensive setup here and kind of try to hold my bases. I want to really max out. But I'm struggling having map control. I also want to get a 5th base out, obviously. But I'm getting closer and closer to max out. So that seems to have some real potential for me. I have some Colossus in this army. I have some Disruptors in this army. I'm setting up a 6th camera hotkey. As once again, I meet my opponent in the middle of the map. I'm like, okay, well, that's a lot of Cyclones, but I also have 179 supply. Sadly, half of my army isn't quite in this fight, but as you can see, I'm really underestimating the ability of the Cyclone. I just don't understand how these fights, well, these massive fights work. I have a decent understanding of like the fights when there's less units around, but I keep blinking in or blinking forward thinking that I'm gonna completely destroy my opponent. But Clem just has so much stuff. It just kind of moving in, using his EMP on my unit. My purification novas are not connecting whatsoever. And here, well, there's really not much to do for me except just pretty much step out as the Viking Cyclone Ghost Hellion army is moving forward. My Stalkers are simply not going to be enough. I'm very, very upset. I swear a little bit in Dutch. Thank God that my microphone was muted. And I pretend like I still have a chance. But all I can really do is it's obviously tap out. I mean, 8 Stalkers versus a massive army. My opponent, I see that he has the 6 o'clock base. It's probably on 6, 7, maybe even 8 bases already. Yeah, life is quite crap for me over here. So GG gets called. We'll go into the second game. Now, I'm quite familiar with the way that Clem thinks, and he's a player that whenever something works, he likes to repeat what he did before. So I decided if he wants to play greedy, then I can pretty much do the same thing. I open up with a very late scout into a Nexus before core. Now, this is a build order that carries quite some risk. If your opponent opens up with a proxy barracks, or really just a proxy anything, proxy 2 racks, you're most likely just going to die. You're going to at least be in an absolute crap ton of trouble. You might not die, but you're going to lose quite some workers. So I scout him opening up with a CC on the low ground here. It's going to be a 1-gas build order from my opponent. I'm expecting an SCV scout as well, because that is what Clem tends to do. Build a pylon on the low ground on top of it, and I'm just looking for his SCV. I don't want to allow him to build a bunker in between my Nexus and my mineral line. So I'll start by just attacking that SCV twice, then I kind of take it from here. Now, I have been thinking about the build order. I've been thinking about it for quite a while. And this build order is really only viable because the Cyclone initially is probably going to be worse than the old Cyclone versus Stargate specifically. So in the current patch or in the old patch, however you want to address it, the Cyclone Marine pushes are a really difficult thing to deal with if you're playing greedy Stargate openers. The reason for that is because A, there's a lot of Marines, and B, the Cyclone is very powerful, specifically against Oracles, but also pretty okay against Phoenixes. So you can't really get away with a low unit count. Now, with the Cyclone in the proposed changes, or in the new patch, or whatever you want to call it, the Cyclone most of the time is going to get reactored. So although the Cyclone by itself probably is going to be a little bit better, the Cyclone doesn't have any support from Marines, because the reactor that usually is used on the barracks is being occupied by the factory to build Cyclones early on. So I actually believe that despite the Cyclone being better, it is worse initially for pushes just because of how it gets produced. If you can't reactor this Cyclone, I'm not actually sure if it is much better. So I believed, basically, this is a very difficult to understand story. I basically believed that I could play greedier without my opponent being capable of doing something about it. Now, I had another theory, and my theory was that if I just basically build Blink Stalkers, I'm going to be incapable of losing. They're the same price as Cyclones, but I think with an even amount of Stalkers, I will always win, because I'm just going to... I'm capable of out-microing my opponent. I can blink back, and it's difficult to individually target with Cyclones, because you're constantly kind of move commanding around. So I've scouted that there was a factory in the wall. That means that that factory is on a reactor. I got my confirmation immediately. Yes, this is indeed going to be a Cyclone build. Now, it could be a more all-in Cyclone build, but I'm capable of scouting. I'm just going in, I'm killing 1 unit for free, and I get to see that there's a second factory and once again a third CC already. But this time, rather than still having to build my own third, my third is already done. So I immediately chrono boost my Nexi, I throw down a force, I have 3 gateways, and I'm completely safe as well. I even feel so secure that I can move on the map a little bit, because right now the Cyclones are going to be very slow, so I could probably just kite them with my Stalkers. I'm not sure if that is actually true, but in the moment, I truly did believe that. On top of that, I also think that I don't need too many gateways initially. I think if I get 4 to 6 gateways before my 4th base, that is probably just enough. His 3rd base now lands, and I see a bunch of Cyclones. I'm like, wait, can I actually fight this? And I decide to just, to just go back home. Like, okay, I'm not gonna risk this. No shot, dude. Chrono boost by Blink. I don't have Blink yet either. So if his speed ends up finishing up midway through an engagement, I just lose all of my stalkers and probably lose the game. Now, my opponent scouts my third base, sees no gas over there. That's probably a little bit confused. It's like, wait, no gas? What is this going to be? I get a fourth base already, and I'll see that my natural also gets scanned. So that is a 450 minerals that Clem just wasted on scanning. He doesn't have any tools to really scout me except, well, that particular scan. And because I'm playing such low gas and very high minerals, I can easily produce a lot of those cheap gateway units while continuing to add extra infrastructure as well. That is the beauty of this. I'm not really teching past a cybernetic score. Like, sure, I have the Twilight Council and a Stargate, but it's not like I'm pumping out Colossus or I'm trying to get Immortals out. Like, these units are expensive, difficult to get often, they take a while. Instead, I just get a lot of Stalkers, and I really desperately want to get map control. So I take both of the Watchtowers on this map, add once again 2 more gateways as I'm getting closer and closer to having full saturation on 4 bases as well. See him moving out with a bunch of Cyclones. And I'm like, wait, can I fight this? Well, I at least want to get some, you know, I want to figure out exactly where he is with his army. Because if I know where he is, then I know where to position my own Stalkers. The one way I can see myself losing this game is if I get caught out of position, I lose a base or I lose a bunch of probes. It happens really fast against Cyclone Hellion. So I see him moving in. He walks into one of my stasis wards. He sends one of these bad boys for it, but I do get the revelation, so that's nice. And I have a massive Stalker count. And I know that if I have an even amount of numbers of Stalkers as he has Cyclones, and I micro it properly, then I'm going to be completely capable of winning a game. So build a battery just for safety's sake, and I'm a bit of a loser. Get 1 Cyclone for free, and I realize that I have way more Stalkers right now than my opponent has Cyclones. And because he doesn't really have infinite range, I can just blink back, and I'm not losing anything. Now I have so many Stalkers that I believe that I can just blink forward as well, pick off a couple more. And if there's no tanks here at home to help defend, I can just move forward and probably kill him. But even if I can't kill him, I'm just going to take a 5th base anyway. I'm going to continue expanding. Transitioning out of mech is extremely difficult and probably impossible if he already committed to extra factories. So having pure Stalker is a completely fine thing to do against even tank mech, because you can just kind of blink around and have a good time. Here I can just blink back, and his Cyclones are completely dying. There I accidentally selected a few too many Stalkers, but it doesn't matter, as I have some nice movement towards the camera, and I managed to beat the battle mech pretty freaking easily with some nice theory. Now, the third game of this series, I decided that once again, greed was going to be the way to go about it. I still believe in my theory that it's difficult to punish Stargate build orders with a fast third base. And on top of that, which I forgot to mention last game, is that I also think it is a little bit easier right now for Protoss to scout as to what is going on. Before, if you build an Oracle and you flew into a Cyclone, you were pretty sure to lose it. So you had to move extremely carefully, and even if you did move very carefully, you often still ended up dying, flying into a Cyclone that barely managed to lock on, and then with their 15 range would just take you out, basically. It was extremely frustrating. I absolutely hated those interactions, and it's one of the main reasons why I almost never opened up with an Oracle. Phoenix seemed to be much more secure and often got more information than an Oracle could, despite the Phoenix, well, not having revelation. So yeah, I was kind of happy with those thoughts. I decided to get a late Stargate once more, very fast third base, and on top of that I also thought, if I know Clem well, and I do know Clem, well, honestly relatively well, I don't think he's going to play the Cyclone build order again. Not just because it looked weak, but also because he just lost with it. Like, I do believe that I kind of had found the counter to at least his Cyclone opener. I think there's alternative Cyclone openers that are perhaps a little bit better, that are maybe a bit more committed going into the early phases of the mid game and with worse eco, but are going to be harder for me to hold. I'm definitely trying to get his Reaper kill as well. If I can deny his scouting after all, that would be absolutely fabulous. So I'm just getting my third base here at the 3-minute mark. I'm like, okay, this feels good, this feels nice. I want to make sure I get my Oracle out in time, get another gateway as well. Here is his Reaper going in, and I just get the kill over there pretty much for free. I didn't quite start my second gateway yet, which is a bit of a mistake, but I get to start my Oracle pretty much immediately. Can throw down a third pylon at my third base location. So it's basically going to be a pylon per base at this point. Very optimized little build order that I'm using over here. Want to get a third gas as well. As you can see, I'm only mining with 4 in gas so far. I want that to become 6, but I want to have the optimal gas mining efficiency by mining with only 2 per gas geyser for quite a bit. And then until I get fully saturated in 2 bases, then I can start rallying into the assimilator. Now, the adept really is just here to confirm whether I was right. And now I see that I'm right, because there's a barracks on the reactor rather than a factory. I'm like, okay, it is not going to be the same thing as before. So rather than straight away getting a Twilight Council or maybe even a second Oracle, I first get a Phoenix out and then throw down a Twilight Council. Now, I still need to get information as to what my opponent is doing because, well, I desperately want to know. What do I see? I see a triple CC opener. So triple CC opener with a 3-Rex as a follow-up. And it is quite difficult to play against a build order like this because you're still going to need quite some units if your opponent decides to move out or push you. But you also don't want to get too many units because then you might not have enough infrastructure for when the medevacs do arrive. The funny thing with 3-Rex build orders out of Terran is that they actually get an absolute crap ton of bio units. Like, it is crazy how many bio units they have. They have more bio units with that than they usually would have with a 2-base attack. However, they have later medevacs, and also they don't have any factory units with it whatsoever. So no tanks, no mines, and that makes the initial pushes a bit weaker. There's also no map control initially at all for the Terran. So if you know these things, you can kind of construct the plans. Like, wait, there's going to be more units, but they have less map control and no factory units. So what can I do against that? And I kind of made the plan here that was like, okay, what I want to do against this is I want to basically have a defensive setup with 2 or 3 sentries and then get a massive amount of zealots that I just use as a run by. Because most likely they're going to move out with their entire army the moment that they can with the initial 2 medevacs. I will be teching and getting a fort base. I can buy time with the sentries and then the run by will kind of force their hand. So that is the plan. I have very good infrastructure. I'm teching extremely quickly. I'm going to get good vision with this robotics facility as well. And I have brilliant vision on top of that with the revelations too. So I have a lot of vision all around. The only thing that I am currently lacking is the ability to really catch medevacs. So as you can see, I start up some Phoenixes again. Not because I think Phoenixes are going to be so great in the battle. No, I'm starting up Phoenixes because I believe Phoenixes will be necessary so that I can just get dropped to death if my opponent ever sends a medevac into my main base. Like, you need some type of cash. And I'm really far away right now from Blink. So I'm like, okay, rather than getting more Blink, I'm just going to use all of the structures I already have, the infrastructure that I can use, and I'm just going to get my Phoenixes out. And that should allow me to hopefully catch some of these drops. I'm building pylons around the map as well. My opponent scouts my fort base, and the moment you see your fort base getting scouted, you can pretty much guarantee majority of the time that you're going to be attacked at some point. So I have those 3 sentries. I have the observer vision as well, building more and more of these bad boys. And I see him trying to move out. And I'm immediately like, okay, that's interesting. Let's see what you're going to do about that. I sent more zealots across the map. So a lot of the time, the mistake I see Protoss players make is that they only send 3 or 4 zealots. But that can often just be cleared by the reinforcements. If you send freaking 14 or 15 zealots, you can't clear that with just reinforcements. It's actually impossible. So now I think I legit have like 18 zealots on the other side of the map. And my army is garbage, but I have so much energy saved up that it doesn't even matter. I see SCVs here as well. I'm like, wait, if you're pulling SCVs and you're on 3 base and you're losing a lot of workers right now, I don't need to hold my own 3rd base, do I? I can just give this up, save my probes, once again move back, and then basically just try to hold ramps forever. I'm continuing to add in more and more sentries, so it's easier for me to hold ramps. I still have very good supply. I'm getting better tech as we speak. The SCVs are coming in from a flank right now. I'm like, wait, I can just chase these SCVs at least for a little bit with these zealots. They either need to go back home or they're gonna die against my zealots. I still have a bunch of units on the other side as well. Now, this fight is a little bit scary because I don't actually have that many units here, so I need to fully wall this off, at least temporarily, and I need to get more Colossi. Now, my second Colossus is out right now. Still some random zealots in the middle of the map. He tries to attack me, but at this point I have a Guardian Shield. I think I have plenty of units. I can pick up that Phoenix as well, and I have so much cash in the bank on top of all of that, that if I just warp in more zealots and I don't get dropped, I'm in a really good spot. I killed a bunch of his SCVs. I have okay upgrades. I have better tech, and now I'm catching this army in the middle of the map. On top of all of that, I still have pretty much perfect vision as well. My Oracle is alive. My observers are still alive as well. I have double forges popping off as well. So yeah, life is honestly just really good for me right now. And now he has this dilemma. It's like, hey, do I want to immediately attack, or do I want to build up to Ghost, or, you know, pretend like the ecos are even remotely even, which they obviously aren't. I have much better eco because I killed so many workers. I have much better prospects for the future as well because, well, I have a better infrastructure. I'm getting I think I just built a Dark Shrine. And once again, I am just setting up these Zealot run-bys. So even if he decides to attack, he's going to have to deal with these Zealot run-bys. And I still have so many sentries that attacking into me is pretty much a death sentence. I can just not fight. This is the beauty of sentries, is you can run by and then decide to not fight. Not fighting is one of the most powerful ways to fight the Terran. It's just by not doing it, basically. What is it again that the Buddha once said? You know, if someone's angry at you, you can just not accept that anger. It's the same with Terran. If the Terran attacks you, you can just not accept the attack. It's like, it's very kind of you to try to do this, but I'm just gonna force you, and there will be an invisible wall between us. It's like, good luck, buddy. Meanwhile, Zealots on the other side will be clearing your entire eco. So I now realize that most likely this is not what Clem is doing, as he is pretty much just standing at home and is most likely waiting for a maxed out attack. So I'm like, okay, I can take some map control in that case. I can pretend to put some pressure on. It's often nice to pretend to put some pressure on, and I can get a prism. And the moment I max out, I want to fight on my opponent's side of the map. Now, why do I want that? If I fight on my own side of the map and I lose a fight, he can immediately walk in towards my production or take out a base. However, if I fight on my opponent's side of the map and I lose a fight, I can still just reinforce and maybe get 1 or 2 extra warpins at home. Maybe I can delay a little bit with sentries running back. There's no objective for me to really defend either. I can maybe run by towards the other side as a way to distract my opponent. So it is generally just better to go about it that way. So the moment you're maxed and you have significantly better eco and you have better upgrades, I think a good thing to do is to add infrastructure, one. And the next thing that's good to do is just to try and trade out. You don't really want to commit to a massive all-out fight majority of the time. But what you do want to do is you just want to have a fight in which, you know, you can get rid of some of your Zealots and you kill some of your opponent's Marauders and some of their Ghosts, basically. So you're just trading out units. I also just noticed that mine wasn't even burrowed properly. Like, it didn't become invisible after it's shot. So that means there's no armor yet. That means my opponent is going to stay on 1-1 upgrades basically forever. So losing out a couple of Zealots. My +3 is about to finish up. I'm like, okay, I think I'm so far ahead right now. I have so many gateways as well that as long as I have a Guardian Shield and I'm not completely messing this up, it should be honestly kind of okay. I'm just targeting down these Vikings with my Archons right now, using my Stalkers as well. And he's microing back beautifully. And I'm not entirely sure if I could continue going. So I decided to just pull back. Yes, I might end up losing all of my Colossus, but my gateway units are so much better. And I can get a couple of extra warpins here as well. That was poor control out of me, to be quite honest. Yeah, this is actually kind of an ideal trade for me, because my opponent can't attack into me, yet he did kind of win that fight, but I have such better eco that it's not even really going to matter. My upgrades are also much better. There's not enough energy on the Ghost, or there's not enough Ghost in general to get rid of my Archons, and thus I can just pretty much move forward, just right-clicking down Medevacs right now with all of those Archons, microing back the individual one, and taking my first win versus Clem in over 3 years. First win in the best of 3, and you see, I get very happy because of that, and that is a beautiful sight. Up next was byun, and after my big win versus Clem, I was feeling pretty okay against Terran, obviously. Now, I watched the series between byun and MaxPax before this, and byun went for an eBay block twice in a row, because I had the series off, so I was just watching the others play. And I wrote down the build orders that he played. I was like, oh, that's mighty interesting right there, byun. Very glad that you went for an eBay block. So I just mentally prepared completely for him to send an SCV across the map. I canceled 2 more workers than you usually would. And then I just played a quick Nexus. So this is a really good start. He lost quite a few minerals trying to get a block in and didn't manage to get it. This was way more expensive for him than it was for me. And also I ruined his strategy, which generally is a very good thing to do. I'm not sure why I'm blowing air out of my cheeks here, but I'm probably not happy about something that happened. Maybe I messed up my probe micro or something. I'm not entirely sure what I did here, but I looked upset with myself. I'm upset with myself very often, though, in StarCraft 2. And sometimes there's no real good reason for it either. So I decided to once again play the build that I was, that I'd won twice with so far, which was the Warp Gate into more Adepts, into a fast third base, and then a Stargate as well pretty quickly from there on out. So I'm just trying to make sure that the Reaper doesn't get any information for free. If the Reaper gets any information, I want that information to come at a price. It is really important for me that that is the case. Like, I don't mind my opponent figuring out that I'm playing Stargate, but if you're gonna figure out that I'm playing Stargate, you're gonna have to pay the price of a Reaper for that, and that makes life so much easier for me, right? One less units for me to take care of, and that genuinely is a good thing. I don't want to completely, you know, show the third base for free, so I hit my probe there for a little bit, get that Nexus down, and I get a second gateway. So now there's multiple ways I can play it from here. I can go into, I could technically probably still go into a robotics facility as well. I haven't actually tried that now that I think about it. So rather than just straight away getting a second gateway, you add a robotics facility. Maybe I should mine a little bit more gas in that case. It's actually a very interesting thought that I'm having just now. Okay, well, I'll experiment with this after I'm done making the video. Because then I could just play Phoenix Colossus with really good eco. There's still going to be some issues, but all of those builds have become much stronger because Immortals are good against everything now. They used to be okay, or good versus most things, and then okay-ish versus Cyclones, because Cyclones outrange them. If you have nothing to kill the Cyclone, then that sucks, because you just get kited to death. That's not possible anymore. So there's a lot of possibility in the early game now as Protoss to either play more greedy or just to completely play different, and it's honestly really cool. I'm looking forward to a lot of innovation over the next few weeks, over the next few months, when it comes to build orders, timings that are different. Of course, that is if the patch goes through as it currently is set up. Now, here I make a pretty major blunder. I throw down 2 batteries, and I see that it's a 3-Rex with a quick factory. And watching this back, I should have realized what I will realize in a little bit from now, and that is that this is a triple CC. I just completely misread this game. I was so happy with my early game that I'm like, well, I'll just play it uber safe. And I don't see him move out. I'm like, wait, this is weird. Why isn't he moving out? Like Marines over here. I'm like, wait, is he just going to rush out like a starport? Well, this is not a fast starport. And then I see the triple CC. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. The moment you see a triple CC, as I mentioned before, you just want to get way faster tech, or you want to get a faster fort base, or sometimes even a combination of the two. Now my robo was very delayed because I thought I was being all-in. I didn't quite, I built too many gateway units, which delays my extra infrastructure, and I took my gases too late as well. So yeah, overall, just not a great start. In an ideal world, I probably would be taking a fort base already right now, but because I actually want more infrastructure first, I'm too afraid to do that. So I'm like, okay, I'll just get one more assimilator first. I'm gonna get all of my gateways, and yeah, this is much worse, this position, than what I had against Clem already. Like it really is not quite as great. I'm not very fond of this at all. Like I almost played greedier against Clem than, well, I played much greedier against Clem than I did over here. Yeah, and as a result, it's just going to be much harder. I still am in a good position, though, nonetheless. Like I said, if Protoss manages to figure out in time that there is a third CC, and they've already played greedy before that, that tends to be very good for TOS. And that's why I think that the early game is shifted a little bit more in TOS's favor than some people might realize. I do have 2 oracles, and that allows me to build a bunch of stasis wards all over the map. Could be very helpful in the lane, but as you can see, my army is quite garbage at the moment. Like I have a lot of gateway units, but nothing really of, well, any major value, to be quite honest. My plan remains the same though. Higher sentry count, and well, no fort base yet. Ideally, I'd already have a fort base on the way. My opponent is moving out. And then just send a lot of zealots across the map. This is a genius little plan. I'm so happy that I figured this one out. This is something that Zest used to do, like exactly like this. He played this for quite a while. Like that concept. Another thing that you do with it is that you start with weapon upgrades rather than armor, because you're not planning on fighting the army, you're planning on killing workers most of the time. And then the rest of your army most of the time is also going to be range. So it's very, it works a little bit different. majority of the time. So I'm just adding another sentry, I'm adding more stuff. Now my zealot run-by comes in. I have 2 zealot run-bys, one in towards the third, one in towards the natural. And as you can see, I'm going to be clearing quite a few workers here. It doesn't pull them away, which actually is a pretty decently sized error. He does walk into my army as well. I wasn't paying enough attention, but the batteries in position are helping me out a lot. I cleared, I think, 7, 8 workers on the third base, about 8, 9 workers in the natural. Now, this all looks very good for me, but don't forget that I didn't get a fourth base because I'm a bit of a moron. I now decide to take the fourth base in a line as a kind of a way to hide the fourth base. I think this is also a mistake because it's just a bad position. So the moment it gets scouted, life is pretty much over. Like, well, it's not over. Okay, that was a bit much as well, but it's fairly bad for me. Now, I once again decide to send out a zealot run-by because I think my opponent probably wants to attack me once more and tries to get map control. This is one of those things that can be really difficult to play against as Terran because generally against Colossus you want map control, but if you try to take map control, my zealots go into your main base and they start killing stuff. So that is also not brilliant. So yeah, you need to, it's a very tight margin, a thin line that you're walking. So yeah, now my base gets spotted. As a result, I need to cancel it. And basically 8 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, I still don't have a freaking fourth base, which is actually very painful. All of the damage I dealt is a lot less valuable because I'm not running away with the eco myself. So imagine if I had 85 workers and my opponent has 50. That is a way bigger difference than my opponent having 50 and me having 65. Like, I'm just not really running away with the game in the same manner. Like, if you're making 3k minerals a minute and you lose 10 zealots, that is quite, you know, that is a significant amount of your money. But if you're making 4k a minute and you lose 10 zealots, then it doesn't feel quite as bad. So the harassment also just becomes easier to execute. So once again, I'm sending in a lot of zealots. I want to really start dealing some damage. My fourth base might be in trouble once more, so I try to split as effectively as possible. But once more, I'm just a little bit too late. Try to blink away, but I'm too slow. Don't forget, this is played on west, so if my micro doesn't look brilliant, that is not exclusively this time because I'm an idiot. It is also because there's just a little bit of ping. So I send my zealots in, but still, without having an extra base, it's really difficult to kind of justify this type of behavior. Like, even if I kill 10 SCVs here, it is just not quite worth it, you know, because I also lose 10 zealots. And I'm not making a lot of cash behind all of this. I'm hardly making cash actually behind all this. I tried to kill the armory. Don't think that quite works out. It's also not super useful to try and kill an armory at this point. If 2-2 has already started, like, really, why would I do it? I don't quite get that. Get the revelation off. Probably, you know what I wouldn't mind? It's just adding, in the mid game, now that I'm looking at this, it's just adding 1 or 2 oracles. Like, just kind of sprinkling them in. Once you have enough gas, like I do right now, and then just building a bunch of stasis wards around the map for vision, but also just, you know, for added safety. I think that would be really cool to play. Just getting really a lot of these guys around. And it also helps with vision, of course, with the revelations. But the stasis ward is such a powerful tool. You can put them on any path and they give quite a bit of vision right now. I split off my army, I tried to blink forward. Tried to kill something there, didn't quite work out. Am I gonna blink forward once more? Can't remember. No, I don't think I do. So now I'm finally getting my fourth base, 11 minutes into the game, and you can imagine that this is not how I had imagined, you know? This is not what I wanted in life. I wanted to have a very good eco about 5 minutes ago, and now I'm getting pretty mediocre eco 5 minutes later. So yeah, this is not entirely brilliant. My opponent is probably surpassing me when it comes to the eco as well. Probably has a fourth base. He has complete map control on top of that as well. This is a good defensive fight for me, but it should have been even better because I just should have been in position. Actually, it was okay target fire. I'm happy with that move. I'm also not entirely sure what to do with my army comp. I was like, well, I want to test out the new Immortals, see how they perform. But at the same time, it's probably also good to still have some disruptors in there. You know, disruptors generally tend to be quite powerful. So I have some vision around the map. Got a cannon over here. Just patrol this bad boy after killing a giant Ursadon. Actually, I think it's a giant mill Ursadon. It's not just any regular Ursadon. No. It's a mill Ursadon. So here I start sending a couple of TTs out on the map. He scans forward. I'm like, wait, is that his entire army? That seems like a wild move. And, well, it is not quite his entire army, as I'm about to find out. My DT is moving in towards the third base. Could get some damage done here. This is a good defensive setup for me. Like, I can hold this 100%. the problem kind of is that I don't have entire vision on the top side. So here he comes in. My DTs were still waiting, but I don't have blink yet, so I lose my DTs for free. He's going to start moving in position, but I don't really have the units to quite deal with it. And at the same time, he's also moving forward with his main army, and my supply is good, but his supply seems to just be a little bit better. He has so many marauders in his army, despite me trying my absolute best. It just isn't quite enough. I tap out, I am upset. And we'll be heading into game number 2, where I have a very special surprise. And in the second game, I decided to change things up a little bit. I opened with a 13 pylon, 14 gate. And if you take a look at my camera hotkeys, you can see that something funky is going on over here. Because my second camera hotkey is on byun's third base location. I'm opening up with double gas as well. I'll give all of you about 5 seconds to think what this might be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, indeed. It's going to be a proxy Tempest. I'm sure all of you had figured it out. Just going to build it here on the bottom side, open up with an Oracle, go into the Tempest from there on out, and then build a Nexus on the other side of the map so I can build batteries. Now, this is especially strong against byun because he often opens up with a no scout, and that allows me to potentially deal some actual damage with the Oracle. On top of that, I was thinking a good response to a proxy Oracle tends to be a Cyclone. However, with the new Cyclone, well, the new Cyclone is just a little bit weaker. Another thing is that Proxy Tempest is quite weak against Cyclones with the Macfield Accelerator. Macfield Accelerator has been removed from the game, so that doesn't exist anymore. Vikings will need to be built in order to deal with the Tempest. On top of that, the Tempest also moves much quicker. The turn, what is it called? The lateral acceleration or something? There's some type of a speed buff to it, or at least it makes it go a little bit quicker. Maybe it's just general acceleration. I can't quite recall the term that was used. I built a battery at home in case it's a Reaper, so I can just straight away move out with my Adept. And my Stargate is on the way as well. Now, the way that I want to play it is just going in with my Adept, seeing what he's doing. Just a single Adept. I don't really need a second one. I'm starting it nonetheless in case a Reaper shows up. So if a Reaper shows up, I can finish that Adept. If the Reaper doesn't show up, I'll simply just cancel the Adept. It's a very simple little trick. I'm not losing anything by it because I'm not really wanting to build anything at the moment. It's not like I need minerals and gas badly right now. I will cancel it in a couple of seconds. After I start my Oracle, of course, which I chrono boost. And then I'm like, wait a second. What would be really cool to have? Indeed, a Fleet Beacon. So I'll start my Fleet Beacon. I scouted my opponent, opened up with just a pretty standard opener. And I decide to throw a pylon down there. Shade into his natural once more. See a bunker going down as he has 5 Marines already. So this is just a Marine into Reactor opener. I have enough cash right now for a Nexus. Do I build it immediately? No, first I go in over here. And at the same time I'm losing my Adept, which is actually quite bad and quite stupid. Because that means that I do not have vision of him moving out right now. Which is actually quite important. And yeah, I need to build a new Adept at home in case he decides to move across the map with those Marines, which indeed he is doing right now. I also decide to build a Nexus over here after my first Tempest, and I want to add a battery as well, of course, which is going to be important. I don't want to have it too close in range so he doesn't just straight up see it, but then I also start mining minerals. It's like, well, that's pretty freaking stupid, Harstem. Not sure why he would do it. I'm just mainly afraid right now of my opponent having, you know, 5-6 Marines that are going across the map and me not being capable of doing anything about that. My first Tempest is about to pop out here. So we see another 5 Marines, and these Marines indeed arrive on the other side of the map. Trying my best to hold as he continues scouting with his 4 Marine squad. Don't really want to lose that probe, but I do. That's just the way it is sometimes in life. And I also realize that this is a triple Rex, which is probably the best opener that my opponent could go for. Because he's going to have Stim and Combat Shield, and he has a crap ton of Marines, which you can just send across the map. At home I'm busy, well, not quite losing it, but taking quite some damage on it. I decide to super battery, but then rather than microing my Adept, I decide to chase it. My Tempest doesn't quite get the hits in either, and yeah, I decide to just go back. It's like, well, I need to do something at some point. But this doesn't feel very comfortable at all. I need to build another Stalker as well. Life genuinely is sucking at the moment. Let's move the Stalker back in battery range. Second Tempest is about to pop out as well. It's going to allow me to one-shot Marines. The problem now is that both Stim and Combat are out. So yeah, that's going to make matters much, much worse for me. And at the same time, this attack also hits, so I need to pull a couple of workers. Here come his own marines in my main base. At the same time, he's attacking me at my proxy nexus as well. You can see it on the mini-map as I'm taking quite a bit of damage. Battery not helping out enough as I lose my first Tempest. He shoots down my battery and there's really nothing I can do. I tap out GG, lose 0-2. And yeah, sad little way of going about it. So I'm 1-1 right now in the group. Next series against elazer over here. It's a PvZ. It's probably the matchup that I've practiced the most on the new patch. It does have a pretty clear understanding of what has changed on the Zerg side, a pretty clear understanding of what I believe has changed on the Protoss side as well. Of course, the main things being that the Baneling is pretty much nerfed away as a core unit, and some major buffs on top of that for the Hydralisk as well, at least when it comes to initial timing attack. So I was going to be pretty snappy on things like a quick lair. If I see that, it's like, hey, quick lair might mean a Hydra rush. It could still mean other things as well, but most of the time it's going to be some type of Hydra rush, as this is a new toy. And most of the time when people get new toys, even if the new toy isn't as good as the old toys, they want to play with the new toy at least a little bit. So I was kind of looking forward to that. So I open up with a really fast Nexus. As you see, I have some oversaturation on my minerals. This is not because I'm an idiot. This is because I want more minerals. People look at the red numbers in the main base. They're like, oh, 17 out of 16, that's oversaturation. But actually the 18th, the 17th and the 18th worker on minerals still provide about 98% efficiency on mining. They hardly have lower efficiency than the 16th workers. It's about like 2 or 3% or something like that. So if your focus is on a higher mineral count, like my focus is with the build order that I am playing, this is an okay thing to do. You need to properly stack them up, though. If you don't stack them up, they're going to be bouncing in between patches. So this is a fairly high level play. And that's what I decided to do here. Open up with a Warp Gate as well as an Adept. And I'm honestly just playing the exact same build that I played against Terran. Really fast third phase. Couple of Oracles. Of course, the follow-ups are going to be very, very different. But yeah, the main thing here is going to be scouting, figuring out what my opponent is doing. And then if it is Banelings, just trying to stay alive initially, because Banelings don't scale well into the early stages of the late game. They're not good in large numbers, or they're not as good anymore. The moment Storm pops out or high Archon counts, they become so much worse now. And I think what we might end up seeing is just going to be a lot of Roach Hydra play, or initial Roachling Bane or Roach Hydra Bane play into those lurker compositions. I think this is going to be, in my mind, the most common thing. I'm scouting for drones on the third base. I see, or in the natural, and I see there's enough drones, so I'm not so worried about a link flood right now. Of course, there still could be some links going towards my side of the map, but it can't be like 50 links trying to kill me, maybe trying to go for a third base cancel or something. Now, I wasn't entirely sure how to actually wall on this map. I don't think I had played this map quite enough in the Protoss versus Zerg matchup. I think I played like 3 or 4 times, and yeah, that's kind of stupid, honestly. The poor preparation out of me, which is, yeah, just kind of sad in a way. Warp Gate gets thrown down, or sorry, Gateway gets thrown down as the Warp Gate is about to finish up. I move my Adepts in position to make sure that I'm secure. And because Warp Gate finishes so quick with the build order that I'm playing, it actually feels kind of okay. Like this is fairly safe. I haven't actually lost any type of link flood towards my third base. In a way, this is actually safer on my third base. Now, why is that? That is because the base starts earlier, so it's harder to cancel. It has more HP. By the time that speed finishes, it basically, my Warp Gate is done already as well, and my base has like freaking 700-800 HP, so it's hard to cancel. They need to invest a lot into it, and then often it's not going to be worth it. On top of that, I also have Oracles, of course, to defend. So yeah, life generally is quite good. I get an Oracle over here, just checking the third base. Now wanting to fly in towards the main, perhaps, to see if there indeed is going to be some type of lair. I'm trying to add one gateway, but this is not a great wall for me, honestly. This has not been a great wall. I get a fourth gateway as well, and I see that there's a lair here. I'm like, well, do I want to revelate that? I don't think I actually do. I'm just going to stick to 3 oracles right now, adding in a Twilight Council as well before my robotics facility. I often prefer a fast robotics facility, but here I'm like, you know what? Getting a quick Twilight, getting some fast Templar archives is all going to be very valuable for me. I think against a Roach Warren, you probably do want to get a fast Robo, so you can start pumping out Immortals at a high pace. But if you're not against a Roach Warren, then it's not necessary. So I see the Hydra Den being thrown down right now. And on top of that, I also see that we have a layer already done. Well, you can build a Hydra Den without a layer, without a layer. So that makes a lot of sense. I get a Sentry, want to start a battery right now. If someone rushes out a Hydra Den this quick, it means they also have mined gas much, much quicker. So most likely, there's either not going to be a forward base or a very late forward base. The eco is going to suck quite hard as well. And all I really need to do is defend. So you see that forward base? Fairly late indeed. I'm just looking for some damage. I'm not getting it quite yet. As I see more and more links being produced. And every time I see more links being added into the mix, I know for a fact that drones aren't being produced, right? Like you can't have drones and links going out at the same time. Well, you can if you 50-50, but then, well, then you have neither a strong push or a good eco. So I'm just scouting. I see low drone count on the minerals there, and I want to check what's coming out of those larvae. I see Hydras. Okay, this is just straight up telling me here. It's like, okay, I am going to be playing a Hydra link push off of a low drone count with a lot of gas. So my mineral eco sucks. If you manage to survive against this, you're going to be absolutely golden. So I have 3 oracles here. Now, there's a couple of ways I can go about this. I can either use the oracles defensively, or I can use them aggressively. So I clear units on the other side. I can use stasis wards. I can also decide to just use my my pulsar beam ability. So for now, I'm just deciding to keep them home, at least for a little bit. I also don't want to be caught off guard by like a massive drone wave behind this. So I still want to at some point check, like, hey, what's going on? Building more Templar as well. I have these batteries going up. Probably should have gotten a cannon in my natural now that I'm looking at this. It's actually kind of sloppy in a way. But I have +1. I have my charge. I'm like, wait, can I just fight this? And no, I really can't. It's kind of risky for me to move this far forward. Luckily, I have a very far forward placed battery as well. I'm going to use a super battery on that. These zealots are slow zealot warp-ins. And I'm using my oracles on the other side of the map as well. I'm trying to add more, what do you call it? More gateways, but I don't quite have enough spots in my main base. There's no spore at this base. I'm just targeting down drones. I'm like, well, if I target down drones, this will force my opponent into attacking into me pretty heavily. At the same time, he moves in, and once again, a slow warp in because of a poorly positioned pylon, but it's still fine. I killed about 10-12 workers, did lose 3 oracles, so it's probably good for me, but not entirely worthy. Because now I have no scouting. I can't see if he's producing drones or if, you know, more Hydras are being built. Like, what's the case here? I don't quite know. Gonna catch at least a couple of these links that are being built. Add more Archons as well. Almost losing an Archon for free there. I think something that might be good to do right now is just sending out a Zealot run by. Usually Zealot run... Oh, I actually do that. I'm a genius. I love that Kevin of the past and future Kevin have the same thought. I do see that his army rotates over there, so I'm like, never mind, I can't do that. Can't do that quite yet. So I have to just go back. I'm sending my Oracle around. It's like wanting to get some more information on the fort base specifically. It's like, how many drones do you have there, really? It's important for me to know. So... just moving down here, I see some banelings. And the way you want to micro this is keep all your high HP units in front. Use a battery, ideally a super battery, but I just realized I don't have any energy. I'm about to get some new one though. I can get the energy right about now. Right about now. And then send in the zealots after you clear all of the banelings. Well, I didn't entirely wait, and there's another wave of banelings in the back, which actually clears so many zealots. Poor play out of me, but I still think it's, well, barely going to be enough. As my opponent is on a very, very low worker count. I pull my probes back right now as well. My upgrades are getting better and better as well. I add in 2 more Archons once more. And I get my extra gateways down, finally. Immortal count continues to grow. I'm not sure if I can save this base. I don't think I actually can. Maybe I could have, but it would have been kind of risky. I start my +3. My opponent doesn't have any upgrades, so that is good for me. And this really is the beauty, because right now I know most likely he just killed my forward base. He's not trying to kill me anymore. There's no banelings being morphed, so that means he's saving resources, or maybe he even pulled out of gas to get more mineral. Like, something is happening if you see this many links. So I'm afraid of mutas. I'm afraid of maybe like attack into lurkers or attack into hive. Just a lot of drones being produced at the moment. So kind of mentally I'm thinking, well, I probably want to move out at some point. In the near future, honestly. I'm just adding a couple of Archons in right now. Getting cannons at home in case there's run-bys. He goes in for a drop. Don't forget, drops have been buffed as well. So I warp in Zealots, I warp in some Stalkers. Just attack that little thing. And he tries to come in. But he's really just winning time. And it's obvious to me as well that he's trying to win time. Like, he's not actually trying to attack me. He's just kind of running me around, trying to make sure that I can't do anything stupid. So I move across the map with my oracles. I fly into his hydras like some complete idiot. Now, my prism is out. I want to see how many drones there are, because that's actually somewhat important. There's not too many, but there's definitely a couple. And he doesn't have a massive army. I do have way better upgrades, so I'm like, okay, I can perhaps move across the map. My +3 not done yet, but he doesn't have any Banes. And Zealots against Hydra Ling are actually very powerful, especially if you have a higher amount of upgrades. So he sends a Dropper Lord across the map. I'm going to send some Zealots into his natural as well, because he doesn't really have a solid way of dealing with that. Power up in more Zealots here as well, defensively. And then I just push into my opponent. And with the better upgrade, with the, well, probably way higher army supply as well, I pretty much just get a big fat W. These 4 Zealots are going ham. Archon's going ham. Stalkers managed to hopefully clean this up. And just like that, I pretty much get a win over here versus elazer. Game number 1. And that's beautiful. The second game I do decide to scout, as you don't want to be the guy that never scouts. I don't actually know what the correct percentage is, but I think you probably don't want to scout in about 25 to 30% of your games. 12 pool is a very good solution, or is a very good build against a no scout. But if you're scouting and the Zerg plays 12 pool, it's actually quite good for TOS. Like if TOS knows what they're doing, they're just going to end up being up. And I think you end up being up quite far. I think it's somewhere like 70-30 or so. So yeah, I think generally playing 12 pool every single game for Zerg is not very viable at the highest level. And thus the no scout build orders tend to be quite strong. It gives the Protoss quite a decent advantage, either with gas or with minerals. You don't get to block your opponent's natural hatchery though, which can be considered frustrating. Some build orders or certain styles rather have a hatchery at the 3rd base location. But nowadays there's so little Twilight Council builds anyway. It's not absolutely necessary. Like if you wanted to open up with a Twilight Council, you 100% have to block your opponent's natural. Otherwise you simply cannot win. I just misclicked my pylon there. That's impressive. Didn't even know that was possible. Look at this blocking though. Pew, 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 pew. It's actually crazy how well I'm doing that. I'm impressed by myself there. Holy crap. Good job, Kevin. We're all very proud of you. Did forget my pylon a little bit, so it starts about 3 seconds delayed. A little bit less proud of that. I'm just gonna check once again to see if his links are moving anywhere. And if they are moving anywhere, what can I do about that? You know, do I need to add extra adepts? I see that he's sending out a drone for a 3rd base. Just gonna send my probe back home as well. 2nd chrono boost immediately. Send 2 workers from my main base into my natural. And I build a Stargate. I always like using my scouting probe to construct my 3rd base. It just feels kind of optimized. And I think it also is kind of, you know, kind of efficient, rather than having to pull another worker off. Doesn't feel nice. Now, I can't recall if I was planning on finishing this adept. I think I initially had the thought that I wanted to finish the adept, but then I think I accidentally let the shade finish. But mentally I was somewhat ready for it. I'm taking quite a bit of damage on it. Didn't really get anything done. I have 2 adepts over here, just gonna end up shading back. He most likely already has produced the extra links anyway, so it's not the end of the world. Usually it's quite nice to actually check to make sure that he's built the links, because if he hasn't built the links, you can just let the shade finish and you can kill a lot of drones. But I didn't check for it, which is, I guess in retrospect, it's actually pretty dumb. I shouldn't be laughing about that. We don't laugh about stupid things here, my friends. We're sad that they happened. Now, my plan this game was to go for a quick Twilight Council of 2 oracles. Now, I had played against elazer a decent amount, and whenever I played a fast Twilight Council into Glaive Adepts, I always did it off a single oracle. So I was like, well, if I can do this off 2 oracles, maybe he's going to be a little bit confused. Maybe he's a little bit confused, maybe I can deal some damage. Like, that was not very advanced thinking, but thinking nonetheless. Which, you know, can't always be said from all Zerg players, so definitely did a big plus for me here. 3rd base finishes up, send my Twilight Council stars as well. Now, I don't really need a 4th gas, but you probably still should get it a little bit earlier than I did right now, in case your opponent is scouting you. I didn't quite know where his Overlord was. I'm looking for him, like, wait, where is this crap? Then I see this pillar. I'm like, wait, there's a pillar here? That actually, that looks like a good place for an overlord. There's no way. And I was like, ah, there we go. So I sent one oracle back home to deal with this, and his overlord is gonna get cleared right now. Start my glaive as well. I actually think I started my glaives way too late. I'm not sure why. I don't think I was quite paying attention. Probably too busy looking for that overlord. And I also wanted to move across the map with at least some of these adepts, because I truly did believe that very often when you're playing in a glaive adept build, the greatest move you can pull is doing a move out with adepts, because who expects there to be more adepts if you're being very risky with your initial adepts, you know? It's like I'm out here on the map, you know, I'm risking my life, I'm threatening to finish a shade as well. Then I don't. Then I kind of want my opponent to believe that I'm not going for a real all-in here. So I'm gonna add a Templar Archives really quickly as well. I was hoping there wasn't a Roach Warren. If my opponent opens up with a Roach Warren and this is what I play, I think I'm not just in trouble. I think I might actually be dead. Like, dead. Not ha ha ha, but you know, sad face. Robotics Facility also gets thrown down, but it won't, at this point it won't help me if there's 16 roaches moving across the map, you know? So I sent my adepts in. I'm honestly hitting really late, which is kind of pathetic. But he only has built Link so far. I'm like, oh, that's weird. He has a lot of gas as well. Now I see the Hydra then, and I immediately realized that this guy was trying to rush out Hydras, so he once again just went for the exact same all-in, maybe slightly higher eco. I'm just killing a lot of dudes, taking out these Hydras as well at a decently sized pace. Getting a bunch of drones. I think I end up getting like 6-7 drones there. I get a couple of drones in the main base. I take out the Hydras. And rather than going for Storm here, I decide that it might actually be better for me to just start warping in Archons, because I don't need help in a minute from now. I need help right now. And Archons are definitely going to help me. So I'm adding more gateways. I'm going to build +1. I'm getting an Immortal as well. Lose both of my Oracles, which actually freaking sucks. I want to get batteries. And then the main thing that I want is just getting freaking Templar out. Like, if I can get Archons, the Links are going to be much, much worse. He hardly has any drones here, so I want to send some of these Adepts around to see if I can deal some damage with them. I'm going to build like a cannon and a battery. I didn't do that last game, but this time I will. My Adepts are moving across the map. Almost got a force field in there, which would have been huge, but didn't quite get that. Another Archon warp in, and I don't really have a wall on the side. I'm like, okay, this looks cool. He's going in. I can force field this in. But then my probes and my morphing Archon are blocking the Archon that potentially could be dealing damage, and I actually start getting in a little bit of trouble. At the same time, my Adepts are reaching the other side of the map. And I quickly tap over, but I'm like, well, this isn't worth the trouble. You know, if I start paying too much attention to that, I might actually lose at home as my Archon gets surrounded. Try to force field, but obviously that doesn't work on top of an Archon. He actually has a lot of units out there, but my production is so solid that I believe that I should be capable of doing that. I decided to warp in some Adepts as well, because Adepts are really good against both Links and Hydras, and I can chase with them very easily as well, because right now my charge isn't done quite yet. Now it finally finishes. If I can finish my shade inside of these Hydras, yeah, life is actually pretty freaking decent. I'm like, okay, this felt good. I don't have Oracles for scouting. I'm also chasing just a little bit too far, in my opinion. I definitely should not let this finish, but I do, and I end up losing 6 Adepts there for free, which is obviously extremely sloppy. I immediately go for a recall and still build this fort base, because I believe I can get away with it. Now, I literally have no vision whatsoever on the map, and that feels awful. I really do believe that because my Archon count and my Immortal count is so high, it's impossible for me to die to like a Baneling attack at this point. So the only thing that I can lose to is... Well, I actually have no clue what the only thing is I can lose to. It should technically be impossible. Like, unless it's like Lurkers. He shows up with like 8-9 Lurkers. I don't think it's quite going to be viable for him. I set out a Zealot run by. Just making sure that if he decides to be out on the map, he'll be forced back home. He tries to attack me. My force field doesn't quite catch any Hydras, and thus I don't cast it. I'm adding more Zealots at this base, making sure a run-by can't cancel it. And now these Zealots get hit. I'm actually surprised how many drones there is. I guess I didn't kill as many with my Oracles as I had hoped or thought. I'm taking out quite some units, and I see that his army is actually tiny. I'm like, well, this feels good. This feels real nice. Maybe I can chase. So I send out another Zealot run-by. These Hydras are definitely being taken out. My +2 starts as well. Then I can just send these little Zealots in over here. And I think that is a prism that is building in that robotics facility. Because I definitely want to attack right now. Could be wrong, of course. Yep, there we go. Has an immortal in it, and I just start moving across the map right away. Now, I don't really think there's any way I can lose at this point. I'm getting more gateways as well. But I hadn't quite accounted for one thing. And that is a massive drop in my main base. Like, wait, what's this? It's actually a lot of Hydra, so I immediately start warping into my natural. I have a battery, I have a cannon there, I have a... You know, a lot of stuff. But at the same time, he probably also kind of managed to muster a bit of a defense. There's so many Hydras, actually. It's kind of crazy. My upgrades are significantly better. My Warp Prism, for the people who didn't notice, also got sniped. And he actually has Banelings, and right now I'm starting to, you know, sweat a little bit. It is a very common feeling for me, is when I should never lose a game, yet because of some stupid error, like not scouting that your opponent is dropping with 15 Hydras in your main, you start losing. And now I start sweating and it gets really warm for me. My Zealots continue attacking this hatchery rather than helping me out. And he's pulling a crap ton of drones, and I am kind of dealing with these drones at this point. So all these drones do end up falling. And the Zealot in his natural also killed quite a bit. But I don't really have much left either. I mean, I'm still on 3 bases that are all mining. But my production has been, well, diminished severely. I don't really have a lot of workers. I don't have a lot of production. Like, my entire main doesn't belong to me anymore. So I'm trying to resecure that. As elazer now starts attacking me, I try to use a super battery, but there's simply too many Hydras and the DPS is too high. I'm not paying attention in my natural as he decides to drop in there. I warp some Stalkers so I can deal with the Overlord. I can't really build a Void Ray right now, and I desperately want to get... I think that is a +2 upgrade that is researching on the Forge, but I could be wrong, of course. So now he starts moving in towards my main. I once again want to deal with that. So I send all my forces over and start fighting him, as well as targeting down some of these Overlords, which is of course nice. At the same time, he tries to move in towards my natural, and I start warping some Zealots, which don't finish up, so I have to re-warp them. There's really nowhere I can warp them in my natural safely, so I warp them back in my main. My upgrades are definitely helping me out. He tries to drop once again, and here elazer realizes that with his worker count, there's no real point on staying in. Taps out with the GG. And I see that I have 51 workers to 29. I mean, I played this out poorly, but I managed to win. And that's sometimes just the way that it is. Sadly, I didn't manage to get any recordings of my games versus MaxPax, as I did not manage to click the record button. I lost that one 0-2, and as a result, I got not the correct placing in my group. I got 4th place in my group behind Clem, byun, and MaxPax, and thus did not manage to advance on to the next round. I'm not too unhappy with my performance. I think based on my past results, I probably should have been absolutely dead last. So taking out 2 of these very high-level European players made me quite happy. Got destroyed by byun, got destroyed by MaxPax, but 2 wins. I'm okay with it. So yeah, I'll make another video later on in the week, hopefully with some other pro players as well, just discussing the overall balance changes and how we feel after we've played a tournament, after we've been more familiar with the maps. What is strong, what is weak, what needs to be buffed, what needs to be nerfed. And yeah, if there's any questions that you have for, well, the players that I'm going to assemble, be sure to leave them down in the comments here. Then I can ask them or I can bring it up. I'm not going to ask everything, but if I see something cool, I see something interesting, I'll be sure to bring that up. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see all of you next time for a new video. Ciao, ciao.